Hello everybody, this is Connor at BoatsDon'tSink, here with another Shadowverse Evolve deck profile. This time we're going to be looking at BP07's Natura Sword deck. As usual, this deck list is meant to be a starting point, so take this list, adjust it to your liking, test it for your local meta, make any changes that you feel comfortable with. This is the list that I've been testing the most recently, so it is pretty much in a point that I'm comfortable with and has all the cards that I think I would want in it, but that's not going to be the same for everyone. Looking at the deck, we are playing pretty much all of the Natura cards that you would fit in here from set 7, in addition to Meisha with her spell, and just a couple of older sword staples, Maid Leader, Outrunning the Encroaching Heat, and Octress, along with Trail of Light to sort of round out the deck. It's pretty standard as far as what you're going to see from the Natura sword decks, so I'm mostly just going to break down why all the cards are here and what they're meant to do. Looking at the Evo deck, also pretty typical. We're playing 3 of the Balian. Most Natura sword lists that you're probably going to see are playing 3 of the Viridia Magna Evo. After testing this deck a lot, I never found myself needing the third one, so I actually opted for a second Maid Leader. And I'll talk a little bit more about that once we look at the individual cards. As usual, you can also check out the deck log code in the bottom right. It's going to be 4MQMN, or you can use the link in the description. Looking at our breakdown here, we have a pretty low curve. 10 1-drops, 16 2-drops, then 8 3-drops. So 34 of our cards cost 3 or less. Very early game sort of centric curve, but it scales pretty well into the late game due to some of our evolves and things that we can sort of utilize to do multiple things in a turn, as well as the Nataran Great Trees being able to use excess play points. We are 26 followers, 14 spells, which might seem a little high on the spell count for a sort of follower combat centric deck, but you have to remember we are more of a mid-range deck in the long run. That sort of has bursty finish in the form of storm followers. Looking at our individual cards here. First up, we have Colorful Cook. It's a 1-drop 1/2 neutral. Fanfare, you may put a Nataran Great Tree token onto your field or into your EX area. Give your leader +1 defense. That is something you're going to see a lot with the Sword Natura archetype, is that it gives you the option to put your trees in field or EX area, which is very good for just versatility in general. The trees are 1-cost amulets. When they leave the field, draw a card, discard a card. And activated ability, you can pay 1 to bury them. So Colorful Cook is going to give us one of these for free, and then also give us +1 leader defense. Last words, she's able to discard a Natura card to draw a card. Again, most of our deck is Natura, that is sort of the archetype here. So we have a very wide selection of cards to be able to discard for this. Generally, in this deck, since we're not actually trying to fill our cemetery for any particular reason in the early game, I might skip using this unless I'm looking for something very specific. Most of the time, the only thing I'm going to really be discarding to Colorful Cook is extra copies of herself if I have them, or Princess's Strike if I'm getting close to a Mistalina turn and want to go ahead and get it into my cemetery without having to find the time or a target to play the Princess's Strike. Next up, we have Swordcraft All-Star Maid Leader coming back from set 1. So this is a 1-cost 1/1 that evolves for 2. Evolves into a 2/2. On evolve, search your deck for a follower with an evolve ability, reveal it, and add it to your hand. This is great for just consistency purposes, helping us always have our curve that we want. It essentially means that we're playing 6 copies of Balian, since if we draw this, we can just use it to search Balian. 3 of our cards in the evolve deck are legal targets for this. 4, really. You're never going to use the Maid Leader to search another copy of itself. In some of the early, like, sort of aggro sword decks, you would do that just to get bodies and sort of keep chaining them into each other for card advantage. But here, our primary target is going to be Balian, Sovereign Light, since he is our biggest source of card advantage throughout the game. Made Leader getting him just really helps with our consistency. Sometimes you might go for Octress if there's something very specific you want out of your opponent's discard, or if you think that she's just going to be a really powerful play to progress your game state. But usually, and the reason I went up to 2 copies of the Made Leader Evolve, early game you're going to want Balian for card advantage and setup, and then late game you can use Made Leader to search for Meisha, Hero of Purgation, since she is one of the strongest finisher options that we have in the deck. And previously, when I was only playing 1 copy of the Evo, I would often find myself, using it to search Balian early, and then not having the ability to search Meisha late game when, over a course of 3 turns, like, all I would need is just, oh, if I can draw Meisha, I win the game right here. And that gets a little sketchy, and I'd rather just have the ability to search that when I need it. Especially since Made Leader is cheap enough that sometimes you can Made Leader Evo and just go ahead and play the Meisha out in the same turn, and sometimes just kill people if it's late enough in the game. If you do draw the 3rd Made Leader, obviously the 1/1 body is useless, especially when I was playing 1 Evo. 2 1/1 bodies is also useless, but this deck has so much draw discard with the Natura Great Trees that you can just discard any extra copies that you don't want to search with. Next up, we have 3 copies of Princess's Strike. This is essentially just Angelic Snipe. It's 1 cost, quick timing, deal 2 to an enemy follower. It has the extra text of if there is a Mistalina Forest Princess on your field, deal 6 damage instead. So Mistalina is our main boss monster in this deck. She's a 6-drop 4/6. Seems a bit weird that your Snipe would want your 6-drop on board, but Mistalina has an effect to play Princess's Strike from our cemetery for free when she enters. So basically, if we're playing Princess's Strike from hand, it's usually going to deal 2, but it doubles as a 6 damage fanfare effect for Mistalina if we have one in cemetery. You can also, turns 7 onward, if you play Mistalina and hold up play points, these in your hand can be very powerful tools to, stop things like Mono from evolving and swinging at you. So, still worth noting to keep up for that as well. Our last 1-drop is Tempered Ether. We're only playing 1 copy. You'll see a lot of lists play 2 copies, usually not 3. It's 1 cost spell, put a Natura Great Tree token onto your field and into your EX area. So you get 2 trees. You get 1 up front, 1 in the back. This is kind of just an extra card that's, if we draw it, we can use it to get trees. Sometimes later in the game, this can be really good to combo with your Mistalina turns, where if you have Balian, you can sack trees already out, and then Tempered Ether to get more trees, which can help you pump really big boards. Generally, though, this card's not super important, and it's more just, it's another Natura card that we can draw and or discard with our effects, which is generally better than playing an extra copy of anything else in the deck or some other one of. It's just more trees, and tree density is great. Moving into 2-drops, we have Desert Pathfinder. Sort of the staple neutral 2-drop for all of the Natura archetype decks. The 2-cost 2/3 fanfare. You may put a Natura Great Tree token onto your field or into your EX area. Then if there are at least 5 Natura cards on your field and or in your EX area, so total combined, look at the top 3 cards of your deck. You may reveal a Natura card from among them and add it to your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. This guy, A, gives us a tree, which is really good when we're curving out still. But if we already have 5 total anywhere, which you won't be able to do on turn 2 if you play this guy on curve, but starting turn 3 you can. So it's actually really good sometimes to follow up the next 2-drop that we'll look at with this 2-drop on turn 3 to be able to get the extra card draw. He replaces himself, and he digs for our important cards. He digs for Balian, he digs for Mistalina, he digs for removal spells. It just sort of helps us get set up and always have a very high quality hand. The 2 attack may also not seem like a lot at first, but because of Balian's ability to pump our Natura followers, this can very quickly get out of hand if your opponent decides to leave him sitting around. And of course, the tree that he makes, and the trees are Natura as well. so that does count toward his 5, which is why you can get to him pretty quick on turn 3 if you open like Colorful Cook into Lupine Axeman into Desert Pathfinder. It's kind of your best curve. Speaking of Lupine Axeman, that is going to be our next 2 cost. It's also a 2 cost 2/3. Fanfare, you may put in a Terran Great Tree token onto your field or into your EX area. So again, with the trees, we're just trying to set these up early since we're going to have uses for them late. The one thing you do have to be careful of is managing how many you're putting on your field versus your EX area. I generally don't want to go past 3 on field so that I still have room for 2 followers. Oftentimes, though, depending on what my hand looks like, I'll stop at 2 on field and start putting them in my EX area after that. But of course, you do have to be careful with your EX area since it can get clogged and stop things like Balian from being able to draw you extra cards, or Octrus from being able to get you extra cards into EX area. So kind of a balancing act there. But Lupine Axeman is going to be our first card that actually really cares about them being on our field. His activated ability is to engage him and any number of Nateran Great Trees on your field to deal X damage to an enemy follower, where X is the number of Nateran Great Trees you engage. So best thing you can do here, right, is turn 1 Colorful Cook, turn 2 Lupine Axeman. You can immediately engage Lupine Axeman to deal 2 damage by engaging both trees to whatever your opponent's turn 1 play was, which can keep you ahead on board and sort of force your opponent to start using their plays to answer your board, just like from turn 2 onwards, instead of being able to develop a board that can pressure you. And that's kind of what mid-range decks are all about. This guy's value stays pretty high throughout the game, since you're always pretty much going to have trees around. And you can use him to chip away like 1, 2, 3 extra damage into things that your Princess's Strikes and King's Mights are going to finish off. Next we have Meisha, Hero of Purgation. This is another neutral card. She is not Natura trait, but she is going to act as one of our 2 primary finishers. She's a 2 cost 2/3 with Strike. Select a neutral spell that costs 3 or less in your cemetery and play it for 0 play points. Very similar to Merlin's ability, except we're limited to neutral spells instead of any spell, and it is on Strike instead of on Evolve, which means we do get it multiple times if she lives, but we can't just do it immediately unless we find a way to give her Rush or Storm. Now, she does evolve for 2, which will give her pseudo Rush, so that's something to consider there, but we're not always actually going to be evolving her. The spells that we have to choose from here are going to be Trail of Light and Purgation's Blade. Those are the only neutral spells we play. Trail of Light, you're generally not going to be wanting to cast off of this, but if you're in a position where your opponent has a threat that you need to answer, and your only real way is like play Meisha, evolve, and crash her into it, being able to play a Trail of Light just to draw an extra card and replace the Meisha is still pretty good. Purgation's Blade is the real one that we want to look at here. It's a 3 cost removal spell that also pumps Meisha's attack, and that's how we're going to be killing people. The evolved form is basically the same. It's a 3/4 now, same strike effect. On evolve, we have the ability to pay 5 to bury the top 5 cards of our deck and to give this follower Storm. That's going to allow it to go face immediately and get extra followers in our cemetery, which is important for Purgation's Blade. So Purgation's Blade it's destroy an enemy follower, and then you give each of your Meisha on field +1 attack for every follower in cemetery. So by burying 5, ideally we're putting like 4 more followers into the cemetery, and Purgation's Blade can buff anywhere from like 10 to 15 damage pretty easily once you get into like the mid-late game. And that's often enough for Meisha to just kill someone outright. But in Sword specifically, because we have Outrunning the Encroaching Heat, we can actually give Meisha Storm earlier and without having to pay 5 play points. That opens up some really cool combos where you can do things like play the Purgation's Blade from hand, and then immediately swing and recast it out of Cemetery so that you can get the buff twice in a single turn. Which means like turn 7 is the earliest you can do that by just playing unevolved Meisha, giving her Storm, playing the Blade, swinging. I mean, you can hit for 15, 18 damage on turn 7 with that, with Storm, if your opponent doesn't have like wards or any removal up. So very powerful finisher, very good option, and way to just like close out the game if it goes a bit longer and Miscellaneous not enough on her own. The next 2-drop we have is Octress, Omen of Usurpation. Again, not a Natura card. This one's from a few sets ago. They 2-cost 2/2 Fanfare. Each opponent puts the top 2 cards of their deck into their cemetery. Really not super relevant other than the part where it like turns on Octress's other effects. We're not trying to mill our opponent out or anything like that. Activated ability, we can pay 8 to select a card in an opponent's cemetery and play it for 0. Also not super relevant. 8 is a ton. We might get to that point in this deck, but it's never really like part of our game plan. It probably only ever matters against like the D-shift decks. If you somehow survive long enough to where you can pay 8 for Octress against D-shift, you can take infinite turns against them, which is a win condition there. But otherwise, we're ignoring that text. The main thing here is she evolves. You can either pay 2 to evolve her, or if your opponent has 10 cards in Cemetery, you can pay 0. Early game, you're not really going to be getting away with the pay 0. A lot of times, turn 3 or 4, I will drop Octress and just hard pay the cost to evolve her, just because her on-evolve effect is very good. But once you get 2 turns, say 6, 7, Octress can evolve for free, which will get even more value out of her evolved form. So she evolves into a 4/4, which is a pretty nice stat boost. With on evolve, select a card in an opponent's cemetery and put it into your EX area. This has a very wide variety of uses. Generally, you're going to be using this to grab, say, like a removal spell, either a Forbidden Art or maybe a Blazing Breath or Purgation's Blade or just something like that, to be able to keep the board clear and sort of treat Octress as just a versatile removal spell on a follower. However, there are some matchups where stealing very specific things can just put you in an insane advantage point, such as stealing Kawi against Abyss decks, or stealing Shadow's Corrosion against the Natura Dragon decks, and putting it into your own EX area. Her other relevant line of text is if there are at least 10 cards in opponent cemeteries, any card you play from the EX area costs 2 less. This has a surprising amount of synergy with this deck, since Balian is essentially Alice. It puts cards into our EX area as its form of card advantage, which allows us to play those for cheaper. And of course, we have cards that put Natura and Great Trees into our EX area, which can allow us to play those for 0, which has a ton of synergy with Balian as well, since he can sack them from our field to pump our other followers. Sort of gives us a free just chain of jamming a bunch of trees for 0 and pumping as many times as we need. We play 2 copies of Outrunning the Encroaching Heat. This card might seem a little cute, but it has a lot of sort of use cases in this deck and allows us to put on a lot of pressure when we need to. It's 2 costs. Select a follower on your field, give it Storm, and if it's an Uma Musume follower, +1/+1. We don't play any Uma Musume followers in this deck, so we won't ever be getting the +1/+1, but it is 2 cost to give a follower Storm. The main targets that we're giving Storm here to are either Meisha, Hero of Purgation, or Balian, Sovereign Light. Meisha we already discussed, where giving her Storm allows us to swing face immediately, cast Purgation's Blade from Cemetery, buff Meisha by a ton of attack, and just sort of dome our opponent. However, Balian, with the ability that I mentioned to sack your trees to give a follower +2 attack, sometimes later in the game, say turn 6 onward, you might play Balian, evolve him, and then want to just give him Storm, pump himself with his effect, and get in for 6 immediate damage. This can be very good just to help set up Mistalina kills on the following turn, or set up Meisha kills by putting your opponent into her range. So, again, a lot of options here. Just sort of lets you do whatever you want with any of your followers that can get in for damage. We play 3 Trail of Light. Trail of Light is, again, from set 1. It's a neutral spell. It just draws a card, but if you discard it, you also get to draw a card. And since we have the Natura and Great Trees and lots of ways to sort of sack them for free, we'll be doing a lot of draw ditching throughout most games, and being able to discard Trail of Light to those and draw additional cards basically keeps us fueled up and able to keep pushing our opponent, and removing whatever threats they have. It's kind of a mid-range deck's dream to just have extra gas like this. Moving into our 3-drops, we have our first legendary from set 7, Balian Sovereign Light. This is a 3-cost 3/3 ward, which is already pretty great. Fanfare, you may put a Natura Great Tree token onto your field or into your EX area. Again, this is versatile, allows you to pick field or EX, which is very good because Balian wants you to have some on field, but also puts cards in EX area. So if your field is getting full, you have the option to put it in EX area, but if your EX area is kind of clogged, you can put it on field, whatever you really need at any point in time. He also evolves for 1 play point to a 4/4. Still has ward, which is great. Having a just 3-drop 3/3 that evolves for 1 into a 4/4 that also has ward tacked onto it allows us to be very offensive and defensive, kind of whenever we need. Versatility is a big thing with this deck, sort of allows you to play aggressive or defensive, whichever you need. On Evolve, we look at the top 4 cards of our deck, put up to 2 Natura cards from among them into EX area, put the rest on the bottom of deck in any order. This is just Alice's effect. It's like the best card in the Fable decks, so it's clearly going to be good here too. Getting 2 cards out of top 4 and putting them in EX area is just fantastic. It's super good for consistency, super good for not running out of gas, and super good for scaring our opponent when we hit really good cards off of it. Being able to put things like Princess's Strike, King's Blade, or King's Might, or Mistalina herself into our EX area, or just fighting an extra Balian that you can play on the following turn to evolve again, can really get our opponent thinking about how they have to answer our followers. The last effect on Balian is to banish 2 Natura Great Trees from field to give a Natura follower on your field +2 attack. Here are the cards that we can add off of our top 4. Sort of skipped this a little bit, but again, it's most of our deck. We have a very good chance of getting cards here. It's like an 80, I want to say it's like 85% to get 2 or more Natura cards in our top 4. It's like 98 to get at least 1. He's always replacing himself, and he's almost always card advantage, which is great. If we sack 2 trees, we can pump a Natura follower on field by +2 attack. He can pump himself, or he can pump other things. If you go second and you play, like, I don't know, say Lupine Axeman on turn 2, you can play this guy on turn 3, sack 2 of your trees, pump the Axeman, get in for 4 damage. Sort of helps you pressure your opponent a bit. Alternatively, like I mentioned before, you can give him Storm, pump himself, and go in for 6. It's also going to give you 2 draw ditch effects, since you're having 2 trees leave the field, which is great for our Trail of Lights and whatever else we need. King's Might is another removal spell that we got. It's 3 cost, deals 4 damage to an enemy follower. However, it costs 1 less to play if we have a Balian on field, and it costs 2 less to play if we engage 2 trees when we play it. This is a really cool card to get off of Balian when you evolve him, because you can just immediately play it for 0 by engaging 2 trees, which makes Balian fantastic removal, since he can either leave himself like not engaged, so your opponent can't attack him, which makes him even more likely to get through on the next turn, or you can deal 4 to one thing, swing 4 at another. Alternatively, you can, if you're trying to go face, or if you're just trying to like pump your Lupine Axeman or something, you can engage the trees for King's Might and then sack them after they're engaged, since Balian's effect itself doesn't care whether they're engaged or not, which lets you sort of double up on value out of them. So very good card. I will note though, the engage 2 cost can conflict with one of our other cards, or I guess 2 of our other cards that do need to engage trees, being Lupine Axeman himself and Mistalina. Our last 3 cost card here is Purgation's Blade. This is yet another removal spell. We've talked about this one with Meisha. It's destroy an enemy follower on the field, give each Meisha +1 attack for every follower in your cemetery. So since we're draw ditching a lot, and since we are sort of attacking our opponent with a lot of followers, we play a decent number of followers, this will just be filling up over time naturally anyway, which means that Purgation's Blade can get in for very big chunks of damage. Even in the earlier points that you might be using it, you're probably giving +6 or +7 attack to a Meisha, which can very easily result in like 15 to 18 attack on the storm turns if you're using Encroaching Heat. Yet another neutral follower we have, this one is Natura trait, Viridia Magna. This is the big legendary for Natura in the set. 4 cost 0/4, Rush, Assail, Bane. Means that it is just removal for basically whatever you need it to be removal for. It will remove literally any follower. You can attack things that aren't engaged. You have Bane to destroy them, even if you don't deal damage to them. And you have Rush, so you can attack right away. So it's a fantastic removal card. Great for just getting big threats off the board immediately. And it wants to be crashing into things and dying because it has a last words effect. You can banish a Nataran Great Tree from your field or EX area. Note, you'll only get the draw ditch if you choose field. To return this to its owner's field engaged and evolve it. You don't evolve it, you banish it. So say you don't have... say you don't have another Evo left in your Evo deck or something like that. She'll just banish herself instead of getting to come back as the 0/4 Rush. But otherwise, if you do have a copy in your Evolve deck, you will bring her back engaged and evolve her into a 4/4 Ward. With last words, give your leader +2 defense. So this card is removal once, and then it is a 4/4 Ward that heals you, which is fantastic as a mid-range deck. It gives us some longevity, it gives us some targeted removal, it gives us some like life gain defensive option. It's just really good card all around. However, like I said, I haven't found use for the third copy of this Evolve. Usually games are over before you would need the third copy. These are really just here for some of the transition turns while you're still trying to set up your Mistalinas or Meisha. Lastly, we do have our big boss unit, Mistalina, Forest Princess. This is a 6 cost 4/6 Storm. Fanfare, select a Princess's Strike in your cemetery and play it for 0 play points. That is the first removal spell we looked at. So Mistalina effectively deals 6 damage to an enemy follower on Fanfare, as long as you have Princess's Strike in your cemetery. And activated ability, we can engage 2 trees to give this follower +3 attack and our leader +2 defense. This can add up if you're able to do it multiple times over the course of a game, and it gives Mistalina a very respectable attack stat to be swinging in with. As a 6-drop, you can swing for 7 attack and have 6 defense, which is pretty chunky. It's hard to answer for most decks in just one hit, outside of specifically Princess's Strike itself in the Mirror Match or Forbidden Arts from a Nicola in the Machina Abyss deck. Otherwise, 6 is going to take multiple hits to get rid of, and 7 attack means anything that tries to trade into it is probably also dying in return. Note, this is not a once per turn effect, so if you are able to engage 2 trees and then get them off the board with, say, something like a Balian, and then push up more trees, you could also engage those and put Mistalina up to, say, 10 or 12 attack even, which makes her even more threatening and can get in for even more damage. One thing to mention here, though, Mistalina, while she is your finisher of sorts, don't be afraid to use her as like 7 damage removal, where you just send her into something. Sometimes if she's not able to kill, using her to stall a little longer to set up for Meisha kill turns could potentially be better. Looking at the deck as a whole, the pros, you have a wide variety of removal options. We have 3 different spells, we have Viridia Magna, and we have Lupine Axeman that are all removal effects, and we have Mistalina herself with the on-play effect. So very good at being a mid-rangey deck that keeps our opponent off the board. We have multiple sources of card advantage through Maid Leader searching for us, Desert Pathfinder checking top 3. We have Trail of Light off of any of our discards, and we have Balian being able to grab 2 cards out of top 4. So we shouldn't ever be having hand issues. We can sort of keep that pretty big through a number of sources. And we have powerful Storm cards to get in large amounts of damage, either through Mistalina swinging for 7 or 10, or Meisha swinging for, potentially enough damage to just one-shot somebody, or earlier in the game, maybe a chunk of 8 or 10 that sets up some of our later kills. Cons, however, We do have multiple cards that require Natera and Great Trees in various ways, and this can create conflicts in resources. For example, if you need to engage 2 trees for a Mistalina, but also need to play a King's Might to remove your opponent's ward, they might be fighting over those trees, and you might have to settle for only swinging in for 4 damage with the Mistalinas. Alternatively, your effects that sack trees might put you in a crunch on play points, having to push up more afterwards. The deck also struggles to answer wide boards. We don't have any like AoE sweeper effects. We're more just relying on multiple different sources of damage going to different targets if our opponent has multiple wards. One solution to this that you could consider is playing Cyclone Blade, though there is a notable lack of commanders that you would be able to actually proc it off of. It's just Balian and Mistalina in this build. So you might have to alter some things if you wanted to try to fit that in. And of course, the whole deck in its entirety, and the Evolve deck. And as always, you can use the deck log code once again, 4MQMN, or the link in the description. Thank you guys for watching. It's been a while since I uploaded anything, but I'm going to very much try to get back in the swing of things. This is a deck that I've been enjoying a ton from set 7, probably one that I plan on playing in some of the upcoming regional events. So I think this deck's really powerful, really cool. It has a lot of longevity in terms of the meta as well, just since it can do so many good things. It actually lasts for a little while, even in the face of some of the strong decks coming out in the next couple sets. So again, thank you for watching. I will be back next time with some more deck profiles. Until then, there should be some videos on the screen that you can check out in the meantime. See you later.